Okay, we'll go ahead and get started. Hello, hello. I'm Marjorie Mulhall. I'm one of the co-chairs of the Environmental Law Society. I'm here along with Aisha Gale of the Sports and Entertainment Law Society. Do we have Business Law Society folks here? They're co-sponsoring this as well. So our three groups are very pleased to welcome you to this presentation, and thank you for coming. Two quick things before we start. One is a big thank you to the Duke Bar Association for funding our lunch today. And the other is just a reminder that we have recycle bins right outside the room here. So as you're leaving today, please be sure to take any bottles or cans you have and recycle those as you go. So we are very lucky today to have with us Dr. Alan Hershkowitz of the Natural Resources Defense Council. That's NRDC for short. Alan is based in New York, and he specializes in sustainable development, supply chain ecological management, recycling, solid waste management, the paper industry, and the list goes on. He's been with NRDC for nearly 2 decades, and during his impressive career, Alan's been achieving impressive victories for environmental protection the world over. Everything from helping the Belize Zoo improve its waste management techniques to helping create a sustainable community paper mill project in the Bronx, New York, and he wrote a book about that, by the way, which is really cool. Alan regularly advises government, NGO, and corporate officials in the U.S., Mexico, other parts of Central America, Japan. He frequently testifies before Congress, other government agencies, and Alan was also one of the principal authors of President Clinton's Greening the Government executive order signed in 1993. Currently, Alan is coordinating some of the world's most prominent institutional greening initiatives. He's working with industries and corporations to help them clean up their operations. This includes working with the folks behind the Oscars, the Grammys, Major League Baseball, the National Basketball Association, the list goes on. He's also working to green the Warner Music Group and EMI Capitol Virgin Records, who are two of the world's largest music companies. Alan appears often on CNN, ABC, NBC, NPR. The list goes on, not to embarrass you. He is, in short, a tremendously well-known and effective person, and again, we're really lucky to have him with us today. I was lucky enough, speaking of being lucky, to get to work for Alan this past summer, and I was really impressed just with his energy, his drive, and his ability to just make things happen for environmental protection. So I am very, very happy to introduce him to you today, Dr. Alan Hershkowitz of NRDC.
Thank you very much, and I apologize for that lengthy intro. I want to talk with you about advancing sustainable business practices as a mechanism, as an approach to addressing some of the ecological pressures that we're facing as a planet and that we're facing in particular in certain ecologically important regions throughout the world. As you all know, there are various ways to advance sustainable business practices. We litigate towards that. When we do environmental litigation, we're trying to encourage sustainability at some level. When we write environmental regulations, the presumption is that that will advance sustainability. And when we collaborate with corporations or other large ecological actors, that also is designed to advance sustainability. I apologize, but I'm just going to do this to get us all on the same playing field. The term sustainability, you know it. It was coined in 1988 by the Brundtland Commission. Gro Brundtland, the former prime minister of Norway, was the chairwoman overseeing the United Nations Convention on Development and the Environment. They coined the term sustainable development, which, as you know, means engaging in commerce, actually engaging in culture, engaging in any activity today in such a way so that future generations have an equal availability of ecological services, have an equal availability of clean water, clean air, inspirations from species, chemically stable atmosphere. The dilemma, of course, the struggle is, how do you engage in commerce today? How do we engage in culture? How do we buy and sell things today without somehow diminishing the ecological services provided by Earth. And when I talk about ecological services, I think this is fairly well understood. You can't do business without clean water. You can't do business without a chemically stable atmosphere. Obviously, the services provided by nature are priceless, although I believe there was one effort by Harvard to value the services provided by nature at something like $33 trillion. I think we've recently been reading about the crisis in bee pollination. That there is a crisis, a parasite that is attacking bees, and bees are dying, and this is affecting agriculture. I mean, in obvious services, you know, we can't go around hand by hand pollinating fruit and pollinating crops. We rely on nature to provide these services, and unless we take care of... So ultimately, nature provides the underlying value of our economy, and of course, inspiration spiritually, religiously, and culturally. The dilemma is, how do we engage in sustainable commerce when, for example, there is a net increase every day of 200,000 people on the planet? Every 6 weeks, another New York City's population worth of people on the planet, that's net, and people are consuming more, they're not consuming less. So when I was in college and graduate school, there was this assumption that somehow we would be able to live more simply and lighten our footprint on the planet, and we would somehow conserve our way to ecological intelligence. But between 1982 and 2002, personal consumption in the OECD countries increased 46%. Government consumption in the OECD countries, the 30 most industrial advanced countries, increased 21%. So there's more people on the planet every day, and they're consuming more. And it's not as if people are consuming more intelligently from an ecological perspective. The fact is that people don't buy products based on environmental attributes. I would not encourage any of us to bet the future of our existence, of our children, our grandchildren, on the prospect that billions of consumers are going to prioritize ecological criteria as they go about buying products every day. First of all, the environmental attributes of environmental products are largely unknown even to the manufacturers that make them. And I'll talk to you more about life cycle assessments. I helped work with EPA back in the late 1980s and early 1990s with the Society of Environmental Toxicologists and Chemists in coming up with the protocols, the initial frameworks for developing life cycle assessments. But just to tell you where we're at, just as recently as 2 weeks ago when I was meeting with Stora Enso, the head of production for Stora Enso and the CEO of that company, which is the largest paper company in the world, and we were discussing documenting the carbon footprint for the CD inserts used by the Warner Music Group and the DVD packaging used by the Warner Music Group and the sheet music used by the Warner Music Group. They're switching to environmentally preferable paper produced by Stora. Stora had still not been able to calculate the biodiversity impacts or the carbon impacts of the paper products that it is putting into these DVDs. They've been working on it for over a year, and they expect the results to come forward by the end of this year. And we still haven't even come to terms on what the analytical system that we're analyzing should be. We're trying to make sure that this does not get reduced into a subfield of mathematics, just quantifying impacts, energy input, energy output, emissions output, but also life sciences, biodiversity impacts, effects on sensitive demographic subgroup populations, on the poor, on children, on communities of color, low-income people. So life cycle assessments, buying products based on environmental attributes is a complicated thing. Most people buy products based on product price, on product performance, on fashion. And don't take my word for it, I got that from the market researchers at Procter & Gamble. I got that directly from Bill Ford. When 7 years ago, John Adams and I sat down with Bill Ford and said, you know, we're delivering to you today 110,000 postcards from NRDC members who say if you build a hybrid car that seats 5 people and costs less than $25,000, they'll make it their next car. So we encourage you, Ford, to start thinking about building a hybrid car. We deliver the same amount of postcards to Toyota. Actually, Mr. Ford, who is an environmentalist and an incredibly smart person, let us know that really they couldn't do that. And Toyota actually took a different path, and as a consequence, Toyota now, not because of NRDC, but I think we helped alert them to the potential there. As a result, Toyota has a pretty good foothold on the hybrid car market, and Ford doesn't. So there's more people on the planet, we're buying more, and of course, as a result of, and we're not buying more intelligently. Up until 2 years ago, for the previous 15 years, up until 2 years ago, every ecological form of transportation declined relative to ecologically intelligent transportation. Walking, bicycling, mass transit declined relative to travel by automobiles. And in fact, despite the fact that 25% of all automobile trips in the United States are less than 1 mile long, and I apologize, I plead guilty. I just took one of those trips today. I drove from the Washington Duke here, even though I talked to Marjorie yesterday, I said, oh, that would make a nice walk, but of course I didn't leave myself enough time, and I got to go to the airport from here, and I drove about, 3/4 of a mile in a car to get here on a beautiful day, coming from a snowy northeast. So, no logic, no rationality. It was ecologically stupid and less satisfying personally, but I did it anyway. And maybe even cost me more money too on the gasoline. So, we're all culpable at some level. So people buy products based on price. Can they afford it? On performance, how does it perform? Does it satisfy them? And style, how do they feel driving it? How do they feel wearing it? And as a consequence, manufacturers are not getting signals from consumers to buy ecologically, to manufacture ecologically better products. Really, people aren't thinking about environmental attributes when they buy products, so we have to really go to the manufacturing sector, to the people who design the products and design the factories, to get them to design better production facilities so that people are buying environmentally intelligent products even if they don't know it. We're not really focused. I mean, actually, some of the work that I've been doing recently, greening the Oscars, greening the Grammys, working with Major League Baseball and the NBA. We'll be announcing in 3 weeks the greening of Major League Baseball, working with the editors of Sports Illustrated to get this cover story on global warming on the cover of Sports Illustrated, which is a spectacular plus for us because that is a non-traditional ally. Sports is not really known for its affiliation with environmental causes, and to get that demographic in the most culturally influential sports magazine in America was a real coup for us. But as we know from Hurricane Katrina, monster storms are not great for playing sports, even indoors. We do need to get people's cultural assumptions about the environment changed, but really, unless we get the manufacturing firms to change so that people are buying products and they are inherently environmentally intelligent, we're not going to make as much progress as we need to. And we need to make progress quickly because, as you all know, since 1995, the 10 hottest days on record, 10 hottest years on record have all occurred since 1995. Just 2 days ago, we learned that this winter is the hottest on record. We are losing 6 acres of green space every 2 minutes, 2 acres of wetlands every 2 minutes. As a consequence, 80% of all the original wetlands in Florida are gone, 50% of all the forested wetlands in the United States that existed during settlement are gone, 80% of all the original wetlands in California and in New York are gone, and as you know, wetlands are natural water filters. We are rapidly developing our green spaces, and of all the causes of biodiversity loss, certainly the most consequential is conversion of terrestrial green spaces. A lot of our forests are being converted into toilet paper. 98.4% of all the toilet paper on the market in the United States is made from timber, not from recycled paper. And that results in more greenhouse gas emissions. The paper industry is the third largest industrial generator of global warming pollution. It's the #1 cause of industrial deforestation. 42% of all deforestation on the planet is related to the paper industry. And it is the #1 consumer of fresh water of any industry on Earth. 11% of all the water used in the OECD goes just to make paper. We're converting and have, every second for the last 20 years, we've been losing an acre of tropical rainforest. Every second for the last 20 years, according to the President's Council on Environmental Quality data. So, how it could happen, I don't know, but actually we project a 70% increase in timber harvesting in the tropics and subtropics just to make paper over the next 20 years. And we're projecting a 160% increase in global warming pollution globally, with most of that happening in the developing world. Over 100% increase in the developing world in terms of global warming emissions. The paper industry alone is projected to increase its global warming pollution by 100% in the next 15 years. And a conservative 20% increase in global warming pollution estimated to come out of the OECD in the next 15 years. So the trends are not really good. More people, more consumption, more atmospheric loading, What do? Well, to get signals to the manufacturers, it's hard to go around and tell everybody, you know, buy recycled paper, but I'm telling you, go buy recycled paper. That's something that actually, from our perspective, is a good issue because we buy paper products very often. We buy tissue products very often. If you buy paper towels, you buy them maybe once a month. I don't know. That's one I don't use, but I do use toilet paper, and I know that we buy that every couple of weeks. And I myself have gone up to the Canadian Boreal. I've been up in the Kenogami, up in northern Ontario, and I have seen forests that literally have never been cut, never been cut. They've existed for thousands of years, get cut down to make a commodity that we use for basically 3 to 5 seconds. And there's no reason why we should not, at a higher impact in terms of biodiversity, at a higher impact in terms of water use, at a higher impact in terms of global warming pollution. I mean, it's kind of self-evident. Just taking paper and making paper from paper is obvious. It's almost intuitive that you could see that making paper from timber would be so much more chemically intensive, mechanically intensive, energy intensive. There's literally over 100 different hazardous and chemicals that are used to make paper. It's listed by the EPA as a major source of hazardous air emissions. It's a major source of hazardous waste, whereas recycling paper into paper is a lot less burdensome, and there are so many wastes that we need to recover. The EPA Science Advisory Board, and I used to sit on the EPA Science Advisory Board subcommittee on sludge incineration. The Science Advisory Board convened a technical advisory committee on wastes and called it an ecological disaster in the making. There's 16 billion tons of waste generated in this country every year. Agricultural waste, oil and gas industry wastes, municipal waste, medical waste, cement kiln dusts, mining wastes, construction and demolition debris, food processing residues. 16 billion tons of waste produced in this country every year. A lot of it is high cellulose. Cellulose is the most commonly found macromolecule on the planet. Paper is cellulose in water. Bagasse is the byproduct, the waste product of sugar processing. Well, bagasse is also one of the bigger pollutants into the Everglades from sugar processing in Florida. In Brazil, they're converting bagasse into ethanol and into paper. In India, 30% of all the paper comes from bagasse. In the United States, it's a pollutant. We need to shift the ecological incentives towards rewarding closing the loop, towards rewarding ecologically intelligent production processes, subsidizing industry to do ecologically better things rather than subsidizing industry to do ecologically bad things. And we are subsidizing ecologically bad things. I served on an OECD subcommittee on environmentally harmful subsidies, which came out with a report in 2003, which documented over $1.4 trillion a year in ecologically harmful subsidies. Subsidies that promote overfishing, subsidies that promote deforestation, subsidies that promote the use of fossil fuels. We are, in our national forests, as you know, the National Forest Service, which was established in 1912, since its founding has built over 400,000 miles of roads, 400,000 miles of roads in our national forests for timber companies to go in and get timber, and we've historically sold it to them below market rates. There's only 190,000 miles of roads in the entire Eisenhower National Defense Interstate Highway System. There's more than twice as many roads that we've built into our national forests, subsidizing the timber industry to get virgin timber, to impact species, biodiversity, to release carbon stored in the soils and undermine the ability of forests to sequester carbon. We have been subsidizing deforestation at the expense of more environmentally intelligent approaches. What I want to do is show you two quick DVDs. One was circulated recently by Commissioner Bud Selig to all the owners of Major League Baseball. I'm actually in May giving a presentation to all the owners of Major League Baseball teams, and in 2 weeks we are going to announce the release with the Commissioner of Baseball of an environmental resource guide for every baseball team that the Commissioner will be distributing to every baseball team in order to help the teams reduce their environmental footprint. They're putting solar panels, by the way, on Fenway Park. We were up in Boston not long ago. We're getting some teams to use the tickets for games to double as mass transit passes in those areas like the Bay Area, like in New York, like in Boston, to double as mass transit passes. So when you buy a ticket to the game, you also get free public transit instead of driving, although you can't drive to Fenway anyway. But that's not the only field that we're concerned about. This video, which NRDC produced for Major League Baseball, was distributed along with a survey by the commissioner. What we're trying to do is document all the environmental activities being done by all baseball teams so that when we announce the initiative with Major League Baseball in a couple of weeks, we could talk about building on the good work that baseball has already done rather than talk about reducing the impacts of Major League Baseball. Because reducing the impacts, phrasing it that we're reducing the impacts of Major League Baseball implies that baseball has been remiss in stepping up to the plate. You just can't help some of these baseball metaphors. I don't do them on purpose, but it's just amazing how this is why we're partnering with baseball. It is such a, when Commissioner Seelig says, we are now going to pay attention to global warming pollution, we're now going to pay attention to biodiversity, species loss, when Sports Illustrated says, it's changing our game, then the debate about environmental initiatives shifts from is it real to what do we do and how do we address it in an economically intelligent, culturally acceptable way. And it gets taken out of the question of, well, it's just a bunch of New Yorkers or folks from Los Angeles and San Francisco and radicals who are trying to somehow subvert our economy. And frankly, that might sound extreme to you, but I've been doing this stuff for 30 years, and I'd say for more than half of that time, people would tell me, when are you going to get a real job? It's, from the perspective that I have and some others have, this really is an important shift. When you've been talking about global warming for 20, 25 years, people say, wow, all of a sudden everybody's talking about global warming. It happened so fast. Well, it's really just not like that. So this DVD, I think, does a nice job of connecting the impacts of a baseball game with the upstream impacts related to the commodities impact beforehand. And as I said, all the owners and stadium operators got this. And then I'm going to show you another DVD, and they're all about 3 minutes long, both about 3 minutes long, which explains the work we're doing with the Warner Music Group. And then I want to talk to you about why we're doing work with baseball and Warner. So I guess I just press play here. Hit the lights.
It happens every spring. Growth, renewal, another generation, new potential. It's true of baseball. It's true of our planet. And that's why the new collaboration developing this spring between Major League Baseball and the Natural Resources Defense Council holds so much promise. You might say it promises to green baseball from the grassroots up. Major League Baseball has the opportunity to involve its teams and its fans to encourage recycling, conserve energy, reduce costs, and protect America's wild places. It's a chance for owners and teams to do well by doing good. When you consider how much trash is generated on any game day, plus all the paper purchased for programs, packaging, and operations, then factor in water use and overall energy use, and you see Major League Baseball's environmental footprint is formidable. With the help of the Natural Resources Defense Council, one of the country's most respected environmental organizations, Major League Baseball will begin to reduce that impact. Perhaps best of all, NRDC will provide its expertise, as it's done for other Fortune 500 companies, at no cost to the league or its teams. In fact, the goal of the program is to reduce the league's environmental impacts in the most economical way possible, and to make it totally sustainable by having it pay for itself. It will start with simple things. Smarter procurement, like increasing the amount of recycled content in yearbooks, programs, and napkins in order to protect ancient endangered forests from being cut down to make paper products. Smarter employee practices to reduce paper and energy use and keep toxic chemicals off the fields. And smarter fans, by promoting a greater awareness of our actions. In time, it can also include smarter buildings, as new stadiums are erected with greener building practices, saving money from the ground up. When you calculate the amount of virgin forest and freshwater resources needlessly destroyed each year to create paper, you quickly realize this is a bad situation, and one that's wholly avoidable. Consider that more than 70% of the world's paper supply is made from regions with ecologically valuable, diverse habitat, including the U.S. Southeast Cumberland Plateau biogen, arguably the most biologically rich temperate forest of any area on Earth. Paper production is among the greatest causes of global warming pollution, and in its various forms accounts for approximately 40% of all solid waste generated. In a typical office, it represents 50 to 90% of total waste. This is an opportunity for Major League Baseball to affirm its truest values, from responsibility to sustainability to good citizenship. Besides reducing real costs, I believe this environmentally intelligent work can create real goodwill among employees, fans, and all of Major League Baseball's many audiences. The fact is, when we take care of the planet, everybody wins. The Natural Resources Defense Council and I look forward to working with all of you in your cities and your communities. So let's join together to make sustainable practices and environmental responsibility part of America's national pastime this spring and for springtimes to come.
So I'm going to play another DVD, but let me just tell you that according to Commissioner Seelig, 30 million people every year play baseball in an organized way. Little league, college, high school, adult leagues. And what he's very excited about, and we're excited about it because he's excited about it, is the idea of getting toxic chemicals out of our municipal parks, off of our little league fields. As some of you already know, there is a 3 times higher graded incidence of childhood leukemia in those homes that use pesticides and chemical fertilizers on their lawn. And in fact, it's a 5 times higher incidence when people use those chemicals in their home. And so the idea of having these toxics taken out of our municipal parks where children play soccer and baseball, and having it instigated and spearheaded by the Commissioner of Major League Baseball is just a spectacular plus for us. So it's not just merely a question of cultural shift and changing people's attitudes. With the case of baseball, given the pervasiveness of the game throughout American society, it really can have a meaningful impact, although we will never discuss the bat. So we gave an award to the CEO of Warner Electric Atlantic Records for spearheading a drive to change the packaging of the CD and their operations. These, you might want to save these plastic things because they're going to be collector's items as a result of our work with Warner and EMI. We've already designed the replacement because when we were discussing with them changing the paper, and we explained to them the carbon footprint of the paper products, we said, but really the carbon footprint is in this plastic product, which is, inherent energy acquired from, some cases, areas of the world run by dictators that hate our guts, and other parts of the world that are biologically irreplaceable. So we designed changes to this, and this jewel case, this plastic case, is going to be history in the next 3 years.
Seem to go, but you don't know what you've got till it's gone.
Wake up! Wake up! Come on! Wake up! 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 Wake up!
It had its roots in the 40s. Its message flourished through the generations.
Now it's our obligation.
And through the years, music has helped to build a groundswell for what has become the cause of this generation.
Being green will improve our business, the way we value our products, and the way we see ourselves.
With the help of the NRDC, the Warner Music Group,
like so many other companies, are looking to the future.
One artist, one label,
one DVD, one download at a time.
Find the cost of freedom buried in the ground.
1/5 of all the paper produced on Earth is made in the southeast United States, and a lot of it is coming from trees cut down off the Cumberland Plateau.
The Cumberland Plateau is actually one of the more beautiful places in this country that I've hiked. I think that's where a lot of the heart and soul of country music comes.
Unfortunately, very few places in the United States are under as much pressure as the Cumberland Plateau biogem. It is an area of unparalleled beauty, and it is an area being ravaged. The fact that the Warner Music Group is committed to buying paper that is not made from the biologically diverse timber on the Cumberland Plateau is an enormously important statement.
At this point, we have cut enough virgin forest in the world, less more the Cumberland Plateau. I want my children to see it. Once it goes, it's gone.
Don't tell me to stop. Tell the rain not to dry.
At first, you know, after I started making a few dollars, it was just making donations to organizations like NRDC. But as I went on, I realized that, you know, maybe relieve some guilt, but I had to do more. And when I got to the point where I actually was in some position of authority, I realized that we had the power, and it's not that difficult.
We're in the third year of the paper program at the Warner Music Group. It was a pretty obvious fit for us to focus on both paper and the impact it had on a big part of our business.
It's about simplicity. It's about being aware and conscious of what we're doing.
Joni Mitchell's singing about they paved paradise and put up a parking lot, you know. They have been singing about what we're trying to take care of for 30 plus years.
Incredible artists like Carly Simon, Paul Simon, Neil Young, of course, have been so active and have brought a lot of focus to our responsibility to think and act green.
Our artists had started to bring ideas to us about increasing the use of post-consumer paper, post-consumer board, and we were starting to see a trend that was consistent with the things that we believed in.
Initially, we conducted a survey of all of the paper use from the entire employee population at WEA Corp. And there was an unbelievable response from the employees.
When you look at the three areas that we're addressing, which is how our facilities are managed, how our employees consume and use paper, and then how we buy it, there's some very easy, obvious things to do to almost cut our paper use in half.
In fact, we've developed the most progressive set of paper procurement specifications, arguably of any company in the world, in collaboration with Warner Music Group and its printer, Ivy Hill.
Now that this has become part of the culture of our company, the Warner Music Group, people talk about it everywhere they do business. Our salespeople talk to our accounts. All of our suppliers are aware of where we're going.
Every vendor that I actually estimate with and give bids to, I really encourage them to use paper that has some form or some percentage of post-consumer fiber in it. And it's interesting that once you do that, you challenge them and you find out what other things that they're doing as a company to support that initiative as well.
Stand in the place where you live, now think about direction, wonder why you haven't now.
You know, the efforts that we're making here to do better paper acquisition, to find post-consumer paper and get it into our CD packaging. This is easy. Somebody has to make the decision that they want to care enough to do that.
I know John Esposito, more affectionately known as Espo, very well. He's one of my dearest friends and a man that's got a huge conscience and a huge heart. He cares about his community and he cares about his country and he cares about the earth.
And the way he has stepped up to the plate and said, we're going to protect the home of country music ecologically and culturally in the same way that we nurture our artists, it's just been really inspiring to watch.
It takes one person to set off a chain of events, to galvanize people, and to get excited about being considerate of the environment and being thoughtful of how we work at the Warner Music Group.
Don't it always seem to go that you don't know what you've got till it's gone? They paved paradise, put up a parking lot. They paved paradise, put up a parking lot.
Wayne, I want to switch to the PowerPoint, just show some data. You know, let me just say that when John Esposito said, you know, it's easy, it's not easy. It costs more, overwhelmingly, for the most part, it costs more to produce products in an environmentally intelligent way than it does to do it in an environmentally ignorant way. Even though you get a higher resource productivity from your raw materials and from your technology, once the investments are made and the technologies are up and running, there are embedded assets that need to be retired or taken account of. For example, with Bowater Paper Company at the Calhoun Mill in Tennessee, when we were discussing increasing the use of recycled content, they had $60 million of assets dedicated to that amount of the woodlot and the processing of that woodlot into pulp that would have to be written off if they were trying to achieve our level of recycled content. And it was not, a spectacularly high level. F5 here. Oh, okay. Oh, if I want to move it? Okay, yeah. Oh, okay, here we go. Oh, to get it up on the screen. Yeah, I don't know how to do that. So it costs more, it's more logistically complicated, it changes standard operating procedures. I don't want you to come away here thinking that because it's needed, biologically needed, because it's needed in terms of protection for the planet, or that because of the better resource productivity from the technologies, that this is a slam dunk and that it's easier to carry out. It's not. It's harder to do. What's good is by getting these big companies, Warner, we just did the Oscars, doing the Grammys. Actually, I got a call about a week and a half before the Oscars went on to write the statement for Gore, and then it was supposed to be Schwarzenegger that they read on the air about the greening of the event, and then Schwarzenegger left the country, so Leonardo DiCaprio read it. But that was, we basically bought the carbon offsets for the pre-show, the red carpet event, the telecast, the governor's ball. There are many, many different types of activities associated with the Oscars. So greening that event was a very valuable thing because we got our message out to 1.3 billion people. What I want to show you first before, one second. This cursor's not working. Is there a... Okay, you know what I'll do here? Let me just go through these since the cursor's not working. We'll figure this out for a second. These are just some of the more culturally oriented initiatives that we're doing. The Philadelphia Eagles, actually, every team is developing its own logo. The Los Angeles Dodgers are think blue, buy green. Thank you. We developed large ads that are throughout. This is just an example of the Philadelphia Eagles. These are big ads throughout the stadium. Just show you how an enviro thinks versus a marketing person. I said, oh, we should have pictures of eagles because we found out the Philadelphia Eagles were buying paper from eagle habitat in Tennessee, and the eagle is still actually on the threatened species list in Tennessee. And when the owners found out that their yearbooks were being made from paper from where the eagles, have endangered habitat, they said, change that right away. I said, let's show eagles. They said, no, we should have linebackers. And that actually was received better. The Eagles actually spending a little bit more on their energy. There was something like an 18% increase in the cost of their energy to buy 20% of their power from wind, but it didn't translate into more than $150,000. The Warner Music Group saw a 4% increase in the amount of cost for its paper to buy 11 million pounds of paper from ecologically better paper, but that only amounted to $50,000. So it's not really just a percentage thing. You should always ask about what is the actual dollar amount that is going to be affected. I'm sorry I'm going through this fast because I was asked to leave time for questions, and also I've had a triple latte. So when when you have to think holistically when you do this transportation operations. I mean, actually, offsetting carbon emissions from a facility is not a complicated thing to do. The Kodak Theater, where the Oscars were held, for example, the entire event, including the red carpet event, the pre-show, the telecast, and the governor's ball, consumed less than 150 megawatts. So we bought 175 megawatts of offsets. Somebody's phone is ringing. That's maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I just hear that and you don't. And they were only $20 a megawatt hour. So literally, we spent less than $3,000 buying the offsets, and these were investments into high-quality solar and wind projects that were administered by the Bonneville Environmental Foundation. which is a not-for-profit organization that was established by NRDC and other groups. We get no profit from this. And by the way, we take no contributions from any of the companies we work with. We're not allowed to take corporate contributions. So as I say to many of the people we work with, even if you wanted to give us your money, we can't take it. We get funded to do this from philanthropies and foundations and benefactors. Energy efficiency audits, if your building is more than 5 years old, you should recommission it with an energy efficiency audit. Actually, yesterday, Marjorie and I were walking around this building turning off the lights. It was amazing. It was a Sunday, and actually everything looked so much prettier with some of the lights off. We couldn't get them all off, but you know, there was such an amazing, I mean, just motion sensors. When coming here, I was going to the airport, and at LaGuardia, they had this escalator. It was in this obscure part near the parking lot. It just kept going and going and going and going, and you just wonder, what would it take? You know, it's not brain surgery to say, put a motion sensor in there so that, you know, I mean, that thing, you know, literally provides a service maybe for 1 hour a day, but it is working 24 hours a day. It's sort of like an automobile where 99% of the energy contained in a gallon of gasoline does not go to move the passenger. You know, it goes to turn the wheels. 85% of the energy in a gallon of gasoline goes just to turn the wheels. And then the majority, overwhelming majority of the rest of the energy goes to move 5,000 or 3,000 or 2,000 pounds of glass and steel and plastic, as opposed to a 75 kilogram woman or a 100 kilogram man. We're just, and you know, and as you know, in terms of fuel efficiency, in 1908, the corporate average fuel efficiency of Ford Motor Company's cars was 28 miles per gallon, and this year the corporate average fuel efficiency of Ford Motor cars is 25 miles per gallon. So we're not making a lot of progress in terms of efficiency with that particular technology. There's over 75 million people that attend baseball games every year. This does not include any of the impacts associated with transportation. This is just at stadium operations. So there is an ecological footprint to reduce there, although frankly, I'm personally very excited about the idea of changing consciousness among people who attend baseball games and getting baseball to affiliate with environmentalism in the way that it has done for other good causes. Okay. This is, we did a survey. I'm sorry, I'm going fast because I do want to show you actually the data on stuff that excites me. This is the Southeast United States. It hosts the highest concentration, the highest density of pulp and paper mills of any area on the planet. Obviously, the bigger the circle, the bigger the mill. That red line, amoeba-like looking thing is our Cumberland Plateau Biogem, which touches on 7 states. All of these mills are overwhelmingly reliant on virgin timber. Most of it comes from the Southeast United States. Some of it is imported from Asia. Some of it is imported from South America. But overwhelmingly, the supply radius for these mills is 250 miles. And this chart here gives you an idea of what it looks like, what the supply chain radius of, just for chip mills. There's 150 different chip mills that are not even affiliated with paper mills that are cutting down timber to supply those paper mills. And what's important when you look at that pressure, that commercial pressure on those forests, to recognize red means globally outstanding. And it means that there's something happening there biologically that is happening nowhere else on the planet. Actually, since we've never discovered life anywhere else in the universe, there's something happening there biologically that's happening nowhere else in the universe. Okay, these are universally unique habitat. The Southeast United States is the most biologically diverse temperate forests on Earth. This explains why we chose the biogem we did, but trees, endemics, you know, occur nowhere else in the universe. 175 different Appalachian mixed mesophytic, Appalachian Blue Ridge. You could see tree diversity and tree species diversity. In terms of species, it's one of the most diverse freshwater assemblies. 231 different fish species, 67 of them are endemic, all happening within the same area. And that's just the paper mills. There's also mountaintop mining removal. When I spoke in that video about the pressures on the Cumberland Plateau, there is an explosion of second home development and subdivisions. There is a proliferation of road building. The federal government now is proposing to build a highway from Savannah, Georgia to Knoxville through the southern Blue Ridge, the I-3 3rd Infantry Highway that is being justified under Homeland Security. to go from the Port of Savannah to the Oak Ridge National Laboratory. It's going to cut a swath through, again, some of the most biologically important terrain in the world. So the pressures are salamanders. This is the #1 hotspot for salamanders. And you know, the little things, and they're still discovering new salamanders, crayfish, snails. I mean, some of you don't think much about snails. It's the little things that matter. I mean, without ants, we couldn't have soil. Just because we have consciousness doesn't mean we have biological importance. If humans were to leave the Earth, if there were no humans on Earth, only 11 species would go along with us. There's only 11 species that have been documented to depend on human life for their existence, and most of them live in our hair follicles. Without ants, actually most of them live in my hair follicles. Without ants, life on Earth would be impossible. We couldn't have soil. Without snails, snails extract calcium and other minerals from precipitation, from water, and they turn it into they coalesce calcium, which then goes into soils, and which is of course vital for trees and vital for birds' eggs. Without calcium, you can't have birds' eggs. Without birds, we couldn't have trees. No one would be eating the insects off the trees. I mean, snails. Ants, the little things make the world viable in terms of biological importance. But we are, you know, according to some studies, we're wiping out a species to extinction every 20 minutes. We are, as I'm sure you all know from your undergraduate work, in the 6th great mass extinction. And of course, you have to distinguish mass extinction from background extinction. Background extinctions have always gone on over long periods of time, long geologic, historic periods of times, over millennia. Mass extinctions happen abruptly, and this is the first time in history that we know who's causing these mass extinctions. It's human activities that's causing this mass extinction. Actually, even though there's not many endemics, I think, and actually these data understate the case. If you read today's paper and yesterday's paper about North Carolina, there were over 600 species documented in North Carolina in the most recent bird inventory. Charlotte was the #1 bird diverse city in the country, and Durham, Raleigh-Durham, for the first time is #6, made the top 10 list. This was in yesterday's local paper, which I read when I got here. I just read the paper. Looked good to me. So there is a confluence of pressures on this particular region. Clear cutting, mountaintop mining, conversion to plantations. Plantations are not forests. Replanting trees is not reforestation. Forests provide ecological services. Plantations are biologically sterile, or certainly biologically impoverished compared with forests. They host 90% or 95%, according to E.O. Wilson, the conservation biologist at Harvard, 95% fewer species in plantations than in natural forests. They process 40% less water. This is San Francisco. I have no idea why someone inserted this slide to represent sprawl for a slide on the Cumberland Plateau, but I'll change that. But the point is that there is a cumulative effects, an unprecedented amount of cumulative effects, and also global warming pressures overall. So, and this is why, when you look at a map of the most highest concentration of imperiled species in the United States, you could see the southeast United States is second only, actually, to the Central Valley of California in terms of having the most at-risk and threatened and endangered species, because it is the most biologically diverse and it is facing the most amount of pressures. And a lot of this has to do with paper, and it has to do with energy use, coal. As this administration has submitted funding bills to increase the use of coal by 20 times in the next 2 decades, that is going to have a devastating effect on the expansion of coal mining throughout the Southeast. Okay, so, and this area overwhelmingly, by the way, is not well protected. That's another important thing. The conservation status, the light green, less than 1% of the area has meaningful government protections. So you can see that the Southeast United States is not well represented in terms of being protected by government, even though it is so outstanding biologically, so important. Just on the Cumberland Plateau biogem, more than 50 million people depend on that biological system for clean drinking water. And so the pressures on that having a potentially devastating effect on the ability for commerce and other activities to take place there. So I apologize for going so fast, but that's the way it is. These are my kids. And they're going to go to sleep now, I think. This will go to sleep. Yeah, okay. So I'm going to take questions, and I'm sorry, I was supposed to leave a bunch of time and I left a little bit of time. I actually didn't even get through like page 1 of my notes. So it's nothing like preparing for a talk at the Duke Law School and not using your notes. So anyhow, thanks for coming, and if you have any questions, I'll be happy to take them. Yeah, hi.
How did you originally initiate the contact with Major League Baseball?
One of the nice things about working at NRDC is we have a very well-connected board of trustees. And I got, when I published my book, turns out that the publisher of Island Press that published my book was the college roommate of the owner of the Philadelphia Eagles. So when the guy bought the Philadelphia Eagles, he contacted the publisher and said, do you know somebody who knows about greening stadiums and teams? And they contacted me. He said, yeah, we just published this book. We had a board retreat actually at a trustee's home unnamed trustee's home in Sundance, Utah. And one of my other trustees is an owner of the Oakland Athletics baseball team. So when he found out about what we did with the Eagles, the person whose home it was says, we really need to get to sports. You know, we really need to get to these non-traditional allies. And the guy who, one of our trustees, Bob Fisher, whose family founded the Gap, he also owns he's an owner of the Oakland Athletics and the Golden State Warriors, said, I know Bud Selig. Alan, why don't you write a letter to Bud Selig and I'll get it to Bud Selig about greening baseball. So I did, and we set up the meeting. So we went in, and we really couldn't talk about environmental stuff too much. Because they're in it, you know, this is a business. You got to go in there and talk about, you know, increasing their revenue flow, and you know, I don't know how to help them win the World Series, but that's what they care about, is making money and winning the World Series. Although the commissioner doesn't care about winning the World Series because he doesn't, you know, have a particular team. But we really have to frame it in their language, and that's really so critical. There are cultural barriers to sustainability. I can't impress upon you enough that the problems that we face are really not so much technical as they are cultural. And when I say cultural, I also mean in terms of economic assumptions about what return you're willing to accept. I mean, I remember working in the dot-com era on a paper mill in the South Bronx that was going to return over a 20% return, but because people could get 35 and 50% returns investing in startup dot-com companies, they were like, why would I invest in a paper mill that's going to clean up you know, a contaminated brownfield in the single poorest zip code in New York City and provide health care for the highest concentration of AIDS patients in the country, for a mill that was designed by Myelin to produce recycled paper that was going to reduce global warming pollution and recycle paper, when I could invest in pet.com and make, you know, 10 times more money. And that's sort of what we were facing. So there really are, you know, culture, and also changing operating procedures. We're working with the Warner Music Group. When you get hired, or it used to be, when you got hired at the Warner Music Group, you'd get a CD player, a printer, and a computer. Every cubicle had its own printer. So when we went around, it was like ridiculous that they weren't sharing printers, and that these printers were single-sided. So we went, you know, when we wanted to change it to, like, you know, central printers that also are copiers that could be double-sided, the IT people were like, don't muck with our system. And it was literally had to go to Edgar Bronfman. It literally we had to get the word down from the head of the company to change the IT infrastructure in a more efficient and cost-effective way. So there are many things that are just not rational, like me driving over here today instead of walking, that happen all the time.
I think, unfortunately, we have to see it.
I have a couple seconds. Sure.
We have questions.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.